My name's Phil Shumshaw, and this week I am speaking to Dan Bauscher, who is a social media consultant just like me. In fact, he's a Brightside associate as well, and also the host of Good Enough Chats, which is a podcast dedicated to mental health for men, which we will be talking about in a little bit of detail later. But welcome to the show, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We used to do these on a kind of weekly basis, and it was with LinkedIn Live, wasn't it? And it was always a bit of a high wire act, mostly because mostly because the technology was a bit sketchy, wasn't it? Using Restream, and it was like, is it going to work this week? So this is recorded, so we should be fine.
We can edit all of the glitches out.
And there might be something left afterwards. we shall see. So we're going to be talking about the craft of communication. So that's finding your voice and delivering it with impact. And the format of these, the way they're working out, is that we're going to ask you three main questions or topic areas to discuss, and then some quickfire questions at the end, and maybe a couple of surprises in there. We shall see. But let's get started with the first topic, which is something I think that we both feel some association with and some empathy with, which is around the idea of being an introvert and working in the social media space. So both of us spend a lot of our time helping other people to prosper and raise their profile on LinkedIn. And in previous lives, we were both PR people, which is much the same thing, but through the media. So we're kind of used to being a little bit in the background and quite comfortable with that. But obviously, when we're doing our jobs, we have to also put ourselves out there on LinkedIn as well, which if you are shy or introverted or both, that's quite difficult. So tell me about how you feel about that as a self-confessed introvert yourself. How do you wrap your head around it, and what advice would you give to people if they feel the same?
Yeah, and it's really common as well. I mean, I've often thought maybe I picked the wrong career path when I've been surrounded by like loads of other comms and PR people, because it does seem to be, understandably, a field that attracts a lot of more extroverted personalities. But there's absolutely a role for the introvert, and the kind of the brooding that you do, the thinking that you do, ruminating in the background whilst everyone else is talking, often allows you to kind of pipe up with some half decent questions. Do you know what? Showing up on social media is, I don't think it's an option for people anymore. So introverts need to find a way to kind of show up and feel comfortable with that, and that's what it really is. It's about how do you use these tools, which are incredibly powerful and can really shape your career or your business in a way that doesn't feel icky, that doesn't feel disingenuous, and that also makes you want to come back and do it. Because I think we've all looked at our LinkedIn feed or any social media feed from time to time and thought, can I really be bothered with this today? There's so much stuff that's being pumped out that just looks like humble bragging or just nonsense, that it's a massive deterrent. You really have to kind of build up the will to want to do it. But as you say, I'm an introvert by nature, and if I've found a way to do it that feels okay, then other people can find a way that's right for them. I guess the hack, if you want to call it that, that's worked for me is if I feel like I'm the center of attention, it's never going to work.
Right.
But if I feel like what I'm doing is in genuine service of others, different ballgame altogether.
Okay.
So think of it like, what is it that your audience needs? What is it that you can provide that is going to help somebody else to do this stuff a little bit better? and anchoring everything that I do in how is this going to help someone? What is the practical thing that that person can take from it that they can enact? Apologies.
Is that a ring? Is that a ringtone? No, you've got to tell me what that ringtone is, Dan.
That is a default ringtone on the Pixel, and there's one for the blooper reel.
I'm staying in, Dan. You've got to carry on that, I'm afraid. Introverts. Go on.
Oh, God, the shame. What was I saying?
That you were talking about the hack and giving service to others.
Okay, yeah. So I'll start that bit again. So yeah, the hack for me is I've convinced myself that if I focus on what is useful for other people, then it becomes a lot more straightforward for me to share my experience and my expertise. So I'd like to think if you look through any of the content, any of the posts I've put out, that there is always something in there that I feel is a tangible takeout that somebody can apply to how they approach, say, for example, LinkedIn going forward. So Dave recording, I've just posted a LinkedIn article, which is talking about the way that the LinkedIn algorithm has changed over recent months. It's 360 brew 360, depending on who you're talking to. That entire article, if I'd have said, look at me, I'm amazing, I know everything about LinkedIn, that kind of tone just would not have worked for me. And if I was told that I had to sell myself on the basis of what I wanted to share, it wouldn't work. But if I couch that article in terms of this has happened, here are some really practical things that might be useful for you to go and apply to your own work in 2026, I feel a lot easier and happier putting that stuff out. So obviously I'm on LinkedIn selling LinkedIn services, right? So it's a bit of a cheat. I'm not selling industrial pumps to people in the hydrocarbon industry like other people need to. But if you can start to think about what you're doing in terms of how it will help other people, I found it's helped me to get over a massive sort of psychological obstacle of turning up on this platform, sharing insights, trying to build an audience that could ultimately become customers.
Yeah. I think the build on that for me is there's a couple of, I suppose, my hacks in my head are, one of the most awkward ones is around using imagery and video, actually. So I think introverts tend to like that less. The idea of turning up to an event and like holding a camera out and like, let's do a selfie. That really makes me cringe to do it or to suggest it. But if I tell myself it's part of the job, and there's a reason, there's a rationale for it working, then I will convince myself to do it. And I find it actually much easier to do in a work setting than I do in a personal setting. And that thing generally applies to LinkedIn for me as well. There's lots of things that I say on LinkedIn that I'd actually feel quite embarrassed to say on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. But because it's part of the day job, that's the kind of what I tell myself.
See, I think it's great that you can do that. I can't do that because I don't believe that particular lie. When I try to convince myself of it, I know that you're self-employed, so your job and you are intrinsically linked. It's one and the same. So I find that quite difficult to kind of. I've tried to use that logic to convince myself, but it's not landed for me.
Yeah.
But in saying that, you have made me think of a specific thing that I do around video that has helped me to get over that horrible kind of cringy feeling that you get when you start to put video out.
Self-consciousness, isn't it? I mean, that's what you feel. You feel very self-conscious.
Really self-conscious. And you want to, I mean, I'm also a perfectionist, right? So I'm kind of introversion and perfectionism is not a great combination for ever getting anything out of the door. So I've kind of had to teach myself how to navigate around that as well. So when it comes to video, for example, the perfectionist in me wants to know exactly what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, which would lead to massive scripting of answers. But when I'm watching a video back where someone's clearly reading off a script, I hate it.
Yeah.
It does nothing for me. So what I've had to do, or the technique I've developed, is when I'm doing a video, I'll like literally take, say, a Post-it note, and I'll put 3 bullet points on that Post-it note that remind me the order of the points that I want to make rather than what I want to say.
Okay.
I'll stick it next to the camera.
Yeah.
And then I will just freestyle, trusting myself that I'm going to get the order right. And I may stumble over my words and all of those things that kind of make it look like it's not a scripted video. But I actually think that's a real strength now, because I've gone from never wanting to be on camera to hosting a video podcast.
Yeah.
Because I've managed to build up the confidence through that technique.
Yeah. There's a repetition thing there as well that will help. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's imperfect, but I think that in itself is something that people are crying out for increasingly in this sort of AI world, where you can churn out something that is seamless and spotless. I actually think having the errors, the stumbles, the ringtones going off midway through a podcast recording, it makes it feel real, and people want that. And I think that's only going to go in one direction. There's a counterbalance to that, which is you've got to have focus, otherwise no one's going to stick with it. But yeah, just that little technique has kind of got me from being incredibly reluctant to put myself out on video to feeling no stress whatsoever.
Yeah.
Out these days.
Well, that's good. Well, I think that's a good segue to the second question or topic area that I want to talk to you about, which is your podcast, Good Enough Chats, which you've done, right in thinking, 2 seasons, 30 plus episodes, and it's a conversation-based format with you and another man to talk about men's mental health and just giving a platform to it, really, and destigmatizing it. And so perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the podcast, a little bit more about the podcast. And also, I think a question for me is why are men in particular so bad at talking to each other about kind of feeling type stuff?
Yeah. So the pod is, it's all about lived experience, because I've got my own lived experiences, and when I was really struggling with my mental health, I felt incredibly isolated because men aren't talking about this stuff. They're not saying, "Oh yeah, I've been through X. My other half has experienced similar things to what you're going through." So it's my kind of attempt to try and sort of counter that wide, I guess, societal challenge of men not opening up and talking about stuff. It's completely unscripted, that's on brand for what I've just said about the bullet points in the videos, but it does have a structure so that each guest will face the same 5 questions, and there may be sort of tangents that come off that as the conversation flows. But yeah, it's basically enabled me to have conversations with people from all over the world. This last season covered New Zealand, we covered Dallas, we covered Sweden, as well as plenty in the UK as well, with guys who come forward to talk about things like the impact of neurodiversity on their mental health, grief, burnout, depression, anxiety. And every one of these conversations is like an addition to the bank of chats that I want to build so that they're there when someone needs to hear it. And hopefully hearing those conversations means that person then takes positive steps towards improving their own mental health in the future. So that's the kind of the driving force behind it. In terms of why men are so crap at talking. I want to caveat that with, I think they are getting better, but it's kind of baby steps progress. It's not seismic leaps forward. There is an awful lot of amazing work being done by charities like Talk Club, Andy's Man Club, 2 Pints Deep, really focusing on creating a space for men to open up about stuff, and that's all to be massively encouraged. But I did go through a load of the transcripts and the episodes that we've had so far to see what kind of themes came through. So I'm going to refer to some notes now because I want to make sure I get this right. But there were sort of 5 things that came through as a theme, all of which are very closely linked. There's the fact that there is a cultural stigma attached to mental health, and that's felt more acutely amongst men. There is a kind of a predisposition to maintain this stiff upper lip kind of attitude, grin and bear it, hide it down here, don't talk about it. Yeah. That's real. That's very real. There is a fear of consequences. So what's going to happen in my job if I start talking about this stuff? Are people going to stop trusting me to deliver? Are they going to think that I'm a liability rather than an asset? There is this self-fulfilling prophecy that guys don't talk about it because they don't hear other people talking about it.
Yeah.
And that just adds layers of isolation into the equation as well. So they feel like they are the only person that is experiencing this and no one else will understand because no one's talking about it and because they're not talking about it. So that is a very real challenge that men need to overcome. There is a lack of self-awareness amongst men as well, which is if somebody has felt a particular way for, let's say, 6 months, that becomes their new normal. So they don't even realize how far they've slipped in their mental health because that's just the world that they operate in. And it's very, when you are suffering with depression, for example, it's very hard to see the wood for the trees because that's just what you're consumed by all day, every day. So it can often take a pretty extreme event for you to suddenly have that realization that things are not right and that you need to do something about it. And the last one, you're an exception to this, is men are not good at listening. They just aren't. We want to fix all of the problems. We want to jump in and solve it. Or, and I'm sure you would have seen this play out in conversations with your own friends, we will change the subject straight away if it's too uncomfortable. So you sit in a pub, you could have a bunch of 6 friends having a beer. One of them is really kind of struggling, but is more keen to talk about the football instead of what they actually need to get off their chest. And if they do pipe up, someone's going to start changing the subject, make a joke, have a bit of banter, instead of actually listening to what their mate needs to get off their chest. And those are the 5 things that have come through consistently from the 3 dozen conversations that we've had so far. So it's pretty deep-seated, I guess, the reason why men struggle.
That last one where you talk about the group situation. So I've made a bit more of an effort, particularly since starting the Brightside business with my wife, to engage more with my local community and go to the pub with people, whereas normally I'd be commuting. And so we don't often go, like it's once every other month or something. It's not that regular, but I'm trying to talk to other guys a bit more. And what I've noticed is the conversations are very transactional. And what I mean by that is it's a lot of information sharing, like where's the best place to get a burger, who's top on the fantasy football league. It's all kind of just information sharing. What can I find out? What can I share? And a lot of what you say, a lot of sort of talking about yourself rather than really listening. But actually, if you can talk to people on a one-to-one basis, that there's a chance for that to change. I think it's very difficult for men to have the conversation in a group setting. At least that's my experience. And if you can get a guy one-to-one, then there's a couple of those chaps that I'll go to the pub with, or I'll see out and about, or go for a walk with on their own. And even though we rarely get that deep, at least you might talk about not so much mental health, but you might talk about physical health or something like that. Have you had your PSA test, or those sorts of things will be more likely to come up. You'll never do that in a group situation.
No.
And I think that's something worth kind of just understanding. And maybe, I don't know whether the answer is to try to combat it or just go with the flow, but I'd probably just go with the flow, and if more likely to try and build up a relationship one-to-one with somebody. But I also do think it's important to get together in a group as well.
Yeah.
I think there's value to both of those things, but maybe it's sort of time and a place thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, there is a place for, and again, organisations like Talk Club, Andy's Man Club do this really well. They create a space where you can turn up and you can talk. Now, I think this is, again, a cultural thing that men need to get their heads around. People will assume that you will only go there if you've got a problem. You're like, well, I'm only going to go there if I'm feeling like really bad. That's not the point. We need to think about it less like less mental health, more mental fitness. You don't go to the gym because you're injured. You go to the gym every day to build up your strength, to lessen the chances of becoming injured and help you become healthier, right? The same applies to mental health. We need to normalize talking about things before they get to a point where somebody needs help or an intervention. And you're right. It's you go for a walk, you go for a run with a mate or a couple of mates, but doing something that gives you a conscious choice to say what you're thinking, what you're feeling before it escalates. That's everything. That's how we start to tackle the men's mental health crisis, and we help to reduce the suicide rates, which are, disproportionately related to men. And anything we can do to sort of chip away at that is time well spent, I think.
And just before we go into the third topic area, what do you think companies could be doing, like practical steps? If you're a manager or you own your own business, how can you be taking this insight into a workplace setting?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is lead by example. So, if you want people to feel like they can open up, then do it yourself when you need to. Talk about your own experiences and what they've taught you. I think it's incredibly hard to account for every single experience that people might have had that may be affecting their mental health, but creating an environment that really shows people, as opposed to telling people, that it is okay to talk about this stuff and it's not going to hinder you in your career if you explain that you're going through a difficult time. And that means not just having like an employee assistance program. Companies are, bursting at the seams with employee assistance programs, but people aren't necessarily using them because they're not necessarily shown that it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a healthy culture that shows people these things are okay, that shows people the importance of taking proactive steps to manage your mental health. All of that contributes, but there is no silver bullet for it, and people are still going to struggle regardless of how great the culture of the organization is. But it's really important that day in, day out, you are living and breathing that, as opposed to just come to Mental Health Awareness Month or week or whatever calendar day it is, and just doing a bit then and then forgetting about it for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Good. Well said. Okay, so third question. Let's talk about tech tools. So you and I, we work together quite a bit. People might not know, but we share clients or just share tips with each other on how to get through stuff. And obviously the last year or so, year plus, has been all quite AI heavy. But what have you got an example of a tech tool or tip or something that you've discovered recently that I might not know about? Because we don't talk about these things every week. So I bet there's one that's in your.
There is. It's a pretty recent one, actually. So I was talking to a guy called Matt Ballantyne, and he's a big user of generative AI tools in his work, like
Okay.
super advanced on it. And I was talking to him about Good Enough Chats, funnily enough, and talking to him about this kind of bank of content that we've got and how I'd been trying to use ChatGPT to interrogate the transcripts of these conversations and had been left massively underwhelmed. And he said, "Have you tried Notebook LM, the
Mm-hmm.
Google platform?" And he showed me a couple of use cases that he's had for Notebook LM, and it totally blew my mind. I had no idea. I hadn't investigated it. Like many other people, I probably would have treated it like ChatGPT, or I'd put a link into my website and said, "Do a podcast about this," and then you get two insincere Americans talking about your podcast. But what it's led me to do is I've taken the transcript of all 36 episodes. I've uploaded it to Notebook LM, and it has created this notebook that allows me to interrogate the themes that are coming up in the episodes. So, for example, I used it to prepare for this call. Those 5 points that I gave you about, why are men rubbish at opening up and talking, they came from Notebook LM.
Okay.
So instead of me having to remember the contents of 36 different conversations, upload the transcript, and I said, right, I need to know what reasons come through in the conversations for men not opening up. And it gave me this really comprehensive breakdown. But what it also did, which is super cool, is you can create a mind map of the information that you've put into it. And you can then kind of journey down through the layers of information, and it will say, these are the themes that have come up in all of the episodes. So let's say neurodiversity is one. Click on that, then it will go into the different aspects of neurodiversity that have been mentioned. Click on, say, OCD, and it will take me to specific things that have been said by the specific guests about OCD during the episode. It's an incredibly powerful tool that helps you to kind of take a mass of information and really make sense of it. So I'm literally just in the last 2 weeks starting to experiment more with that platform, that capability. But I think that's a proper game changer for me.
Yeah. What would be good is if you could take that back into the podcasting app to find the clips or the things that reinforce those points, because Riverside does quite a good job of giving you them what it calls magic clips, which are fairly good. And often, I mean, it makes a pretty good attempt at guessing the interesting bits. But if you could then say, right, here's all of my Riverside or whatever podcasting platform people are using. Now go and find me the stuff that reinforces these points. I mean, I'm sure it'll be coming.
You may be able to do that, because you can add links to YouTube videos.
Okay. Yeah.
So for example, for this pod, you might be able to upload the channel or the individual links to each episode
Yeah.
and have it interrogate that.
Yeah.
Same
Pull out
way.
the quotes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's something for us both to try.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, that's some questions done, but now I've got some quickfire questions for you, Dan. So we've got a few of these. So without naming them, can you describe the best client you've ever worked with on LinkedIn profile building?
Yes. Okay. Without identifying them, yeah. So they're a CEO of a multinational, and they are. I think they're unique in terms of my experience of working with senior execs, in that they have a very strong sense of what they want to represent. They totally buy into the platform and the value of the platform. They are challenging in a really constructive way. It's not changing stuff for the sake of it. It's because he's got a very, very clear idea about what he wants to say. But he's a natural storyteller, and he's willing to take a risk. In fact, he actively wants to take a risk with some of his stuff. And he stands out from his competitors by a mile because of it. Whilst all of his competitors are sort of doing almost brand sounding platitudes when they turn up on LinkedIn, he is definitely putting different stuff out there, and it's a really interesting kind of dynamic to work with, and I've not ever worked with anybody else that is as engaged with it and as invested in it as this guy is.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. It's like a game of Guess Who, isn't it? I mean, and we've worked with quite a few people, to be fair, as well. I mean, I think the Brightside Collective, we're over 100 executives that we've worked with in the last 5.5, 6 years. So there are quite a few people to choose from between us. Okay, that's a good one. All right, if you could help anyone in history with LinkedIn, who would it be?
Okay, so there's two different ways I want to approach this one. One is slightly frivolous and not necessarily historical, but two people who immediately would contribute a lot of interest to my feed on LinkedIn if they were active. One is Bob Mortimer, the comedian.
Yeah.
I think having Bob Mortimer's content on LinkedIn would be amazing. I don't think he's got an account, but Bob, if you're listening. The other, slightly more professional, but also a comedian, is a guy called Milo McCabe, who you may know as Troy Hawk, the guy who wears.
I love him. Yeah, he's great.
All over his social feed and his purple smoking jacket from the Greeters Guild, standing outside businesses. He doesn't have an active presence, but he's the reason I say it's slightly more professional is because he's being used in like brand sponsorships, partnerships. So I think there's an enormous amount that he could add to the LinkedIn feed, and he'd be really interesting to work with. But I guess the slightly more serious one would be, I really like working with people who aren't out there with their names in the headlines, but have enormous credibility and just need a bit of sort of direction or encouragement to support it. So the honest answer is I don't necessarily know the names of these people because they aren't out there already. But I looked up a specific kind of example for this one, which is a lady called Rosalind Franklin. Have you ever heard of Rosalind Franklin?
I haven't. I feel like I should, but go on.
Well, Rosalind Franklin did an enormous amount of work that underpinned the discovery of DNA.
Okay.
Didn't get any of the credit for it. Two guys got that a little bit later, but her work.
I feel like I should know you. I feel like I've just walked into a trap with that one, Dan, if I'm honest with you.
It's worth a Google search. But
I don't know the men either. Me and science aren't always that good, so that's my excuse.
I have to confess, I did Google this to look for specific examples of, I guess, the people like the real sort of force behind the hero, as it were. Who's
and there's a serious point to that as well, isn't there? About the people that aren't getting credit for whatever reason.
Because I think there is an enormous amount of latent potential in the LinkedIn user base from people who are not necessarily keen to have their headlines or don't necessarily feel like they've got a lot to contribute because of the other stuff they're seeing in their feed that's not like it. So it would be that kind of person from history who we don't necessarily know about, but did a great thing, and helping them to find their voice.
That's a good answer. Okay. A lighter one or two now. I know you're a big Sheffield Wednesday fan. If anybody's been on your profile, they'll have seen you posting quite a lot about Sheffield Wednesday in the last few months. But question to you, Dan. Objectively today, if you were starting out as a football fan, what team would you support? Would it be Sheffield Wednesday?
Oh, okay. So, for context, I'm not from Sheffield. I've only been to Sheffield twice in my life. I picked Sheffield Wednesday. I chose them because I wanted a more interesting life than just a team that was winning titles all the time. Yes, I would. I would pick Sheffield Wednesday, but I tell
Really?
you what I would do slightly differently
Okay.
is so I'm originally from Gloucester, and
Right.
I went to watch Gloucester City play. That was the first games of football that I got to see live. I think I would, if I could live my life again, I would have gone bigger on Gloucester City
Yeah.
and wanted to support my local club a lot more than I have done over the years.
Yeah.
Um, but to be honest, I coach my daughter's football team. Um, I go and watch Hungerford Town play at home. Recently, Newbury Town have moved back to the town centre, so I've gone to watch them quite a few times. I'm just happy watching like people enjoy the sport and have fun. So as long as I can watch some football, I'm golden. But Sheffield Wednesday would still be my team, yes.
Okay. All right. And if you weren't running a social media consultancy, what would you be doing instead?
Well, the obvious answer would be I'd be really building out good enough chats and trying to make that my thing.
Okay.
Less obvious, I love being outside, and I was occasionally keen a regular runner. Um, Maybe being like a running coach, but doing it somewhere like the Lake District or the Peak District, somewhere where you
Next
could
to
get out on the
Sheffield.
trails. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Near
And
Sheffield, anyway.
but sort of focusing on trails, like getting people out in the
Yeah.
countryside and helping people who are not necessarily seasoned runners to kind of get into it and build up enough fitness so they can then go and run free over the hills and dales.
That sounds good. I'd quite like to do something like that. Right. Well, I think we're out of time now, so we're gonna have to wrap up. But I've got one more question for you, which is our closing question, which I'm asking everybody. What would your motto be if you had one, or maybe you do have one?
I think I do. Uh, Good enough is good enough.
Excellent, good answer. Especially with all the things around good enough chats, I think that is it. That's a good answer to have. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining us. We'll be putting this out very shortly before Christmas, so enjoy that. Get involved with the comments, obviously below on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and we'll have another episode too soon. In the meantime, let's play the music.